Hey, this is Pete from the Family IT Guy. Today I've got a video showing you all of my PCs that I own. The reason I'm showing you this is I'm planning to do some major upgrades and changes between the machines, swapping components here and there. So I just thought I'd start out with saying this is where we are before I do any of the changes. So this first machine on the left, this is my main rig. It's got an AMD FX 6300 CPU in it. Currently has a AMD 7870 XT graphics card in there. I've done a few videos on this machine showing you putting in the new graphics card and uprating the cooling on it. Sitting next to the machine, that machine is this one. I originally featured this machine in a video showing you building this home server. The machine now is not running as my home server. It's actually got an old Core 2 Duo CPU in there, and I don't actually use that machine at the moment. Third machine there, that is featuring a case that I bought to run my home server after I had decided that I didn't like that Zalman case. I bought that machine with its Core 2 Duo CPU for about £30, the CPU and everything, so not very expensive. At the moment that case is empty and I'm not using it at all. And the fourth and final machine, well, not the final machine, but the fourth machine here is a case that I found at the side of the road. Somebody was giving it away for free. I've got a video on there showing me restoring that machine. It's got an AMD FX 4100 CPU in there, and it's also got a new graphics card that I bought for it as well, which is an AMD R7 265. So those are my main machines. The one other machine I'm now going to try and pan the camera towards and show you up there. That machine is the machine I currently use as my home server. It's also a machine that that my kids use for doing their homework on. So that is using an AMD Athlon 2 X4 CPU and 8 GB of RAM. I had a video where I've showed installing the CPU and RAM into that machine. So what I've got planned is basically an upgrade to my main rig. So I'm going to be taking the CPU and motherboard out of this machine and putting them into this machine. And then I'm going to use this machine as my kids' PC and homework machine. And there's also our Plex server. I think the FX 6300 will be a good CPU for that. What I'm planning to do with my kids' machine, or current kids' machine, is I'm going to take the CPU and motherboard out of there and put them into this machine and have this as a gaming machine only. So you're probably wondering, well, what am I going to do with my main machine now I'm taking the CPU out of it? Well, I'm buying a new CPU and motherboard to go in there as an upgrade. I'm going to have another video come along later that will explain what that is. So this is just a quick video just showing the before position before I do some upgrades. I'm also thinking of doing 1 or 2 case mods as well, so I'll show you some of those things as I go on. So I'm starting the disassembly process of various components from the machine. So this is the Zalman machine, which I said contained the Core 2 Duo CPU, and that I wasn't really using this machine much at the moment. So as you'll see, I've taken the 80 GB 2.5-inch hard drive that I was using, and I had that mounted on the bottom of the case there. And I've also taken out the DVD drive that I had mounted in the machine. up at the top, obviously, there. The DVD drive is going to go into that silver Antec case, and the motherboard and hard drive from this machine are going to go into that HP case that I said was my kid's current homework machine server. The rest of the components, the fans, the power supply, and fan there as well, are going to stay in this machine. And as I said, I'm planning to put the FX 6300 CPU gigabyte motherboard into this case, along with a low power graphics card. So there we are, motherboard safely removed and in an anti-static bag, along with the back plate. So this case is now waiting for the motherboard from my main rig. So before I do any changes in removing hardware from my main rig, I've got some software changes that I want to make, such as repartitioning the 500 gigabyte hard drive and installing some extra software onto the 120 gigabyte SSD that I have. Okay, so you can see there that I've adjusted the main partition size on that 500 gigabyte drive and reduced it, created a separate empty space, and that is where I'm going to install Windows 10. The first partition just contains data. So the software I've installed on the machine now is a Kindle reader and of course a Plex media server. So now I'm ready to take out the motherboard from this machine and put it into that smaller Zalman case. Okay, so here we are, this is my main rig. I've taken the side off, so I'm going to be taking the graphics card and power supply out of this machine and putting them into the silver Antec case along with the 500 gigabyte hard drive. The SSD and motherboard and CPU are going into the Zalman case. Okay, we're almost there now. Stripped a lot of the components out of the case. So we've got the SSD and the CPU and motherboard going to the Zalman case. And over here we've got the power supply, hard drive, graphics card, along with the DVD drive I took out earlier, and they're all going into the Antec case. Okay, so those components are now all in the case and wired up. It's not finished yet, I still need the graphics card and additional hard disk drive from another machine, but I'm going to give this one a go and see if it works properly. Okay, well it's not worked. Okay. And that's the power light isn't on, and I didn't hear the case fan beep when the machine started. So it's starting up again. So let's see what happens this time. So it turns out the machine was crashing because Windows had the ATI drivers still installed for that large graphics card, and even though this motherboard has onboard ATI drivers, they're not compatible, so Windows was getting its knickers in a bit of a twist there. But fortunately I have an NVIDIA graphics card that I put into the machine, and that's allowed me to at least boot and get into Windows. So now I'm going to uninstall the ATI drivers and hopefully we should be good to go with the machine as I planned. Okay, so the next step is to take the graphics card and hard drive out of this machine and put them into the Zalman machine. So before I take the components out of this machine, I just want to get rid of the AMD drivers on it so I don't end up in the same loop as I went back through last time. Okay, so components out. So, and the other
components back into this as they should be. So I'm going to go and try this machine back out again to make sure it still works.
Yeah, so the machine started okay, and now it's downloading the drivers it needs for the onboard graphics card.
Okay, so that's the hard drive installed, the graphics card. I've mounted the intake fan on the side, which I think is the right thing to do, to blow cold air directly down onto the VRMs and onto the graphics card, because it's a passive card without a fan of its own. So let's see if it still works. Okay, so that hard drive is now being recognized by Windows, and there is something on the screen, so the graphics card is working as well. It just needs the AMD drivers updating, which is a fairly easy thing to get done. Okay, so I'm just updating my Plex libraries now that are on the new machine. But yes, that's the first machine update all finished. So just a quick rundown on the specs of the machine then, in case you're interested. So it's a FX6300 CPU with a Cooler Master TX3 fan on it, 4 GB of RAM, a HD 6450 graphics card, and an old Antec 380 watt power supply. Now I know the FX6300 gets a bit of bad press in terms of its gaming performance perhaps, but for a server with its 6 threads it runs very well. Encoding of the Plex library on this machine was significantly faster than the quad-core machine that I used previously, so it all works fine, and the fact that it only has 4 GB of RAM doesn't seem to slow that down in any way whatsoever. So I'm just going to plug it into my wall meter and just check how much power it uses when it's on idle, and see how much it uses when it's doing some rendering work as well. Okay, so with the machine idling, current power consumption 62 watts. So I think that's pretty good. So now I'm using the same machine to export the video taken here, which is on the way there. And the power consumption is 125 watts. Oh, and I did manage to fix the light as well as the case fan as well. They were just not plugged in quite correctly. So as you can hear, the machine is not too noisy at all, even though its CPU is running at pretty high loads now. Okay, so this was the first machine that I'm being rebuilding. I've got 2 more main machines that I'm going to be rebuilding, so I'll be doing those as separate videos because I think this one is getting quite long now. Hope you found that interesting, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.